Mr. Speaker, I will be splitting my time with the member for Selkirk-Interlake. Mr. Speaker, I've been in this place for 19 years, and rarely have I been more disturbed than what I have heard from the government benches on this matter today. What we are seeking through this motion is very simply a recognition of reality that the Indigenous, ethnic and religious minorities of Mesopotamia are the victims of an ongoing genocide at the hands of a barbaric terrorist organization. Mr. Speaker, this is not really a matter for debate, because the organization in question, Daesh, in English, the so-called Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, admits openly, brags proudly that it is engaged in genocide. Part of its doctrine is the destruction of those who it deems to be apostates in the areas under its control, its so-called caliphate. And so, Mr. Speaker, since when do we question the reality of a genocide where the very perpetrators admit it? Mr. Speaker, it's almost like admitting a redundancy. This is the doctrine of Daesh, to create a caliphate on the basis of a particularly violent 7th century conception of Sharia law, to impose that violent Quranic law on all who fall within the sovereign territory of that ersatz caliphate. And if those people are deemed to be apostates, like the Yazidi people, they are marked for death, torture, slavery. If they are deemed merely to be kuffars or infidels, they are marked for dhimitude, which, as expressed in the particularly perverse version of Sharia of Daesh, means effectively slavery. The women and girls who fall within the custody of Daesh are not considered human beings. They are considered property to be bought and sold, traded and raped. And, Mr. Speaker, the factual basis of this is not in doubt. Presque tous les organismes des scolaires de génocide ont déclaré que ce que déroule en Irak et en Syrie actuellement aux mains de Daesh constitue un génocide. Le grand scolaire français, le père jésuite Patrick Desbois, qui effectivement a découvert milliers de tombeaux cachés de génocide des Juifs en Europe orientale, in the Holocaust of bullets, le père Patrick Desbois est en Irak actuellement pour faire les recherches. Il a déclaré qu'il n'y a aucun doute que nous vivons là-bas un génocide actuellement. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have heard the Liberal members repeat this canard. There are unparliamentary words I'm not allowed to use to characterize it, but this completely misleading specious notion that there is some established international legal procedure where committees meet and they determine whether or not there is genocide. There is no such procedure, Mr. Speaker. I encourage the Liberal members reading the canned speeches written by the political staff in the Minister of Foreign Affairs office to actually cite what procedure they are referring to. It does not exist. I have right in front of me the 1948 Convention on Genocide does not speak of such a process. This document, drafted by Raphael Lemkin, which defines genocide as committing any of the following acts with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. Mr. Speaker, I was the co-sponsor of a motion in this place in 2004 to recognize the historical reality of the Armenian genocide. which is recognized as such by the overwhelming majority of genocide scholars and, of course, supported by the facts. It has never, however, gone through some international legal tribunal, Mr. Speaker. But you know, let me remind the Liberals of another shame that will always hang over the heads of the Liberal Party. The position of the Chrétien government, or excuse me, the Martin government in 2004, the position of the Liberal Party then, of the cabinet of the Liberal government then, was to vote against recognition of the 1915 Armenian genocide. Mr. Speaker, they denied the first genocide of the 20th century, just as they are denying this genocide today. J'accuse ce gouvernement à nier les faits essentiels pour une claire raison, parce qu'ils ne veulent pas faire le combat contre les génocidaires. Ça, c'est la raison pour leur négation de l'histoire. Franchement, en 2004, la raison pour laquelle le gouvernement libéral a nié le génocide arménien était parce qu'il ne voulait pas perturber les diplomates turcs. Mais, Monsieur le Président, quant au génocide, il ne faut pas être détourné par les autres considérations diplomatiques ou politiques. Il faut suivre et reconnaître la vérité. We have, I can't mention people in the gallery, but we are happy to have here in Ottawa members of the Yazidi community, friends of mine, members of the Assyrian community, members of the Chaldean community, Mr. Speaker, members of the Armenian community, who are pleading with this place to recognize this genocide. And Mr. Speaker, they know what is happening. And they expect Canada to speak the truth. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, not only is this government making things up from whole cloth about some imagined non-existent international process for the recognition of genocide, which has never before been referred to by this Parliament in the recognition of 5 genocides in the past. Not only are they making that up, but this Minister of Foreign Affairs is making up the notion that Secretary of State Kerry of the United States did not actually recognize the genocide. He said in this place that Secretary Kerry says it requires more study. I have before me the March 16th statement of U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who was responding to a unanimous vote of the United States House of Representatives in this regard when he said, quotes, "My purpose in appearing before you today is to assert that in my judgment," he's speaking on behalf of the government of the United States, "Daesh is responsible for genocide against groups in areas under its control, including Yazidis, Christians, and Shia Muslims. Daesh is genocidal by self-proclamation, by ideology, and by actions in what it says, what it believes, and what it does. We call on the government of Canada to do what the government of the United States has done in recognizing that same genocide, Mr. Speaker. Because we are talking about the most vulnerable. The Yazidis and the Assyrians and the Chaldeans and the Armenians are Indigenous people. This government just signed a convention about the rights of Indigenous people. We have Indigenous people who were there long before Islam, long before any self-styled caliphate, long before people spoke Arabic in that region. They were speaking their own languages and worshiping their own religions. And this is not the first genocide that they have faced. The Yazidis and the Assyrians faced genocide as well back in 1915 and before then. So let us be clear. There's only one reason why this government is, like it did against the recognition of the Armenian genocide in 2004, denying this motion, and that is because its recognition would compel this government morally to engage in the international combat mission to degrade and destroy ISIL. I mentioned Father Patrick Dubois, the world's greatest living genocide scholar. In closing, when asked by CBS about this, he said, "How do you stop the machine?" He said, "It can be stopped only militarily." Only militarily? That's how we stopped Hitler. CBS said, "You had to defeat him on the battlefield." Father Dubois said, "In one way or another." And to kill the idea and to kill the people who carry the idea of genocide. Mr. Speaker, our government was doing that in the combat mission. Let us recognize this motion and let us stand by the indigenous people of Mesopotamia to protect them from this genocide.